Well, hello again and welcome to another edition of the Live Wire on Inside UNC Charlotte. And today's topic, how is UNC Charlotte engaged in our community and beyond? And our guest today is the person who is the overseer of our, what we call community relations, but what she's been quick to remind me is what we really ought to call it, community engagement. But Jeanette Sims is Director of Community Relations at UNC Charlotte. And Jeanette, the model for, or models for universities that are engaged in their communities have been works in progress for more than 150 years in American history, going back to the Morrill Act that established the concept of land-grant universities. Mm-hmm. And here at UNC Charlotte, we have a very unique role as North Carolina's urban research university to serve and engage in Greater Charlotte. So with all of that as maybe a long-winded introduction, welcome to the Live Wire, and tell us, just give us the overview of what our administrative unit is called here, which is Community Relations, but what we do to attempt to engage in Greater Charlotte as an institution.
It's a great question, Stephen. And actually, you talk about the history of land-grant universities and the road we've been on. In many ways, our focus really became laser-like in the last 7 or 8 years. When Chancellor Dubois came into the chancellor's role, he created the Department of what was Community Affairs or Community Relations now, with the objective to have this group be that link between, the liaison between the university and the community as needed. I came into this role just a little bit more than a year ago, and I'll be honest with you, one of the things that I've learned already is that there's very little need for us to help with that linkage. Those relationships, especially within the faculty in the various colleges, is really strong already. But we also try to work with them to identify where there are interdisciplinary opportunities for partnership, and most importantly, to also be able to tell our story. It is very important. We are very committed to this region and the state. And really, a lot of our work goes beyond that, beyond the state as well, to be able to address the societal needs, the environmental needs, the educational needs of the region. So, so really, we're there to be able to ensure that we are doing the best job that we can, and then better positioning the university to articulate the message of what we really are doing.
And it's the case in community relations or community engagement as it is in so many other areas of this university that, you know, like you said, we have plenty of room to do an even better job of sort of quantifying what we're doing. You know, so many people are engaged in the Charlotte region, but there are increasing reasons for being able to tell that story with numbers and something that shows progress, which it's all pretty much there. So it seems like part of what you're doing now is trying to get our arms around the story of how are we engaged.
That's right. As a matter of fact, you know, I've been in the Charlotte region for over 18 years, but as I said, I've been here for a year. I had some sense of what was happening out here at UNC Charlotte as it relates to community work because I was doing community-based work, community relations work. I just knew the tip of the iceberg. And so I kind of view myself as a microcosm of the Charlotte community in that regard. And so clearly I think what I've learned is that a lot of the nonprofits recognize what tremendous resource exists here, but the rest of the community doesn't. And there's a lot of value in the community at large having better understanding of what we are doing at UNC Charlotte to serve this community. As a state university, it's important to have our taxpayers recognizing the value of what we bring to this region. But there's also, as you've acknowledged, there's a lot of movement in that regard, not just here in North Carolina, but beyond. One example of that is Carnegie. And the Carnegie Foundation has a certification process that, and you'll see a little bit about it up here on the screen. They have a classification process that we actually went through about 5 years ago, and we were at that point classified as a community engaged university.
And this is in addition and separate to our Carnegie classification as a research university.
That's correct.
But it's
That's
the same entity.
It's
Just
same entity.
make sure we're clear.
There's
it's
a
the same
focus.
Carnegie.
Yes,
Yeah.
thank you very much
Yeah.
for clarifying that. But they feel very strongly about one of the ways to advance teaching and learning is through community engagement. And so they have organizations go through a classification process. And about 5 years ago, we were classified as a community engaged university. But they make you get recertified or reclassified as well. And so we are actually in the midst of doing that right now. This chart talks a little bit about, first of all, what does community engagement mean? In their book, and I think this is really a good description, but specific to universities or institutions of higher learning, it is about collaboration between that institution and the community at large for mutual benefit.
Sure.
So it is not just one way. It is not just doing for or doing to an organization, but it is working with that organization so that there is mutual benefit in learning. So there are several different purposes. It's about enriching scholarship and creative activity, but it's also about allowing us to enhance our curriculum and the learning experience for our students, because certainly the active work that they are able to do gives them that practical application instead of just the theory.
And that's where you really get the payoff for students at the undergraduate and graduate level to come to get their university education in Charlotte, because that kind of two-way street you can only get here. Pretty much.
That's right, absolutely, yeah. And it certainly gives our students a totally different appreciation for what the issues are in the community. But then it better prepares them to actually go and make a difference in the community from a long-term standpoint as well. So that is about preparing engaged citizens and strengthening the civic responsibility, as mentioned here. But also, the hope is, because of that mutual benefit, it is not just about what our faculty learns, what our research shows, what our students experience, but it's also about actually addressing critical societal needs and contributing to the common good. So we're going through a process right now for reclassification. It's a rather onerous process, but that's one of the reasons why our department exists, is to be able to measure and capture these things. And we're partnering very closely with the North Carolina Campus Compact team here, Denise Dwight-Smith, as well as Owen Forsyth and the folks over in Metropolitan Studies. But we look for several different things. Some of those, as you see here, are foundational indicators. Institutional leadership, what kind of culture our leadership creates, and do they model that? For instance, they ask for things like, where is this type of thing mentioned, not only in our mission statement, which it is, but also whenever Phil Dubois speaks to a group, is he talking about the importance and our commitment to serving the community? It looks at how we're funding both internally and externally that community engagement work. It also would measure the impact on students, faculty, and the community. Once again, this is about mutual benefit, as well as what type of professional development we provide our staff and our faculty. Then they look at a couple of different categories of community engagement. One of that is curricular engagement. So it is about that service-based learning that our students participate in. It's about outreach and just pure community service type of work, as well as strong partnerships that we have with nonprofits in the community. So those are the types of things they'll look at. We have to actually demonstrate what progress we've made in the last 5 years on these. There's 16 different categories and tons of different questions within that we document. And through that, we hope that's due in April. We'll hope that we learn by the end of next year, the end of December, that we've been reclassified as a community engaged university.
Is this something that every university in America has to do, or are we special?
It's a great question. Great question.
It seems like a lot of work.
It is a lot of work,
Yeah.
but it is, first of all, it is not required of accredited universities. If you were just to look at the UNC system, probably about 60% of those universities have gone through this process already. Others are looking to go through it now. So it's not a requirement, but it's a smart thing to do. And in many ways, it's smart because it really does help you better measure and articulate some of the value that you're bringing. It also checks to see if you really are working on what you say is important. So it's really a good internal audit, if for no other reason. So I wouldn't want to go through this process every year, but the fact that we go through it every 5 to 6 years, I think is a great thing, because it really does force us to look at whether we are moving the needle or not.
Yeah. So unlike, for instance, the financial services industry, where in banking in particular, there's this CRA, the requirement by the federal government to essentially do those things that we would say constitute giving back to the community. And it's certainly the case that most financial institutions would probably figure out ways to do that anyway. It comes down to what's the right thing to do as a good corporate citizen and a member of the community. In some sectors of our economy, and banking being one of them, there is that layer of government requirement. But in the case of a university, a public university, it's not necessarily a requirement. But as you just said, we're opting in to this degree of accountability. But as we said when we started, so much of this activity is going on here. We're not having to go out and create engagement. And the big task at hand, like you're saying, would seem to be just getting our arms around it so we can better tell the story and quantify it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And so you're right. There can be this sense of I need to do it. And I worked in a corporate environment, and actually for two companies that I was very proud to say both of them believed in this because it was important to be a good corporate citizen. That really, in effect, long term helps grow the community and as a result grow the business. That's kind of what I believe the motivating factor is here as well, not because we need to do it, but because we recognize the value to strengthen the community where we as employees live and work. But also, there is this mutual benefit that we're learning a lot more as part of this process. So we have opted in, as you've said, but it's tremendous value that comes with that.
Yep. You're watching the Live Wire on Inside UNC Charlotte, and our guest today is Jeanette Sims, talking about how UNC Charlotte is engaged in the Charlotte region. And we really could do a whole program on the ways in which our research is applied and represents that two-way street, responding to industry needs, other needs in the economy, other needs in the society that is around us in the Charlotte region. But let's also talk about some of the ways that maybe not everybody would consider we're engaged in the community. Let's take a look at some pictures of some activities just from this year.
Sure.
The Chancellor's Speaker Series, which is now we have 3 years under our belt, and it's an annual event. And there are certainly some other signature lectures in the life of this university that kind of are going in the same direction. And what this represents is our thought leadership in the community, and we're a convener. So far, so good on that?
Yeah. Keep going. You're doing a great job. No, I mean, you're right. We do want to be recognized by the community at large as a thought leader. And certainly the Chancellor Speaker Series is one way to do that. We do have several other lecture series as well, because that's about convening a cross-section of community leaders from the public, private, and nonprofit sectors, and hopefully having a speaker that's going to generate a little bit of thought.
Which we did. It seems like both so long ago, and yet just last week.
That's right. Just a month ago.
Jeffrey Tubin was here.
We had Jeffrey Tubin here. That's right, and we had almost 300 people in the auditorium at our Center City building.
And Center City has really proven itself to be what I think it was hoped to be, which is a tremendous asset for bringing us, that much closer to more of the heart of the city. Mm-hmm. But I'm thinking that we also hope that it reminds people that main campus is not as far away as historically maybe the old timers in the community
That's right.
Once thought it was. So in a sense, are we kind of feeling that we're being more united as a presence by being in Uptown and here on the main campus, and it's kind of bigger footprint.
Yeah, clearly one of the things I hear is that the accessibility to the Center City campus has introduced a few more people to UNC Charlotte that might not have otherwise been introduced. And once they get that aha sort of a moment of all the different things that are going on, then they're a little bit more interested in and willing to think about coming out here to some other events. And when I think about things like the Women's Summit that is part of the Women and Girls Research Alliance effort, that's every other year, it's out here. I mean, we can't accommodate as large a crowd at our Center City, even though we've got that 300-room auditorium. We've got much larger space here, and so we can actually hold several different things. The International Festival, the North Carolina Science Fair, all of that sort of thing are hopefully ways that all of a sudden, by raising the community's awareness, and recognizing us as a thought leader, they pay a little bit more attention when they hear a public service announcement or they see an ad in the paper or whatever. All of a sudden they start thinking, oh, that might be interesting to go to.
Yeah.
So I do think that it's a way to get people's foot in the door, literally, and then figuratively to get them out here.
Yeah, that's true. Now, here on campus and within the university community, we've just completed the annual Giving Green campaign.
That's right.
Which has two distinct components that kind of do come together, and one is the fact that we're raising money as part of the annual fund drive, some of which can be designated to go to the UNC Charlotte Foundation. And the others to organizations in the community. It's a way to organize our giving as a university community. First question about that component of Giving Green is that sort of quantified giving as a university community. Does that count as being engaged?
It does. It does. I think that the challenge is that we don't have, when you talk about that number, and that's this year's number that was just announced, and that was great. That was a big increase over this past year. As you said, people do have the chance to designate those dollars to UNC Charlotte Foundation as well. And so we temper that a little bit in regards to how much we're giving back to the community of that $154,000. But it is important to say that we have a culture that we really look to our employees, our faculty and our staff, to consider supporting financially organizations. But of course, Giving Green is, like you said, about more than just the dollar part of the campaign.
And I think that is evident as I make this transition to the YouTube video. I want to show the brief video that was prepared for the recent concluding event for the Giving Green campaign, because in it there's a good bit of the time devoted to that part of the Giving Green campaign that involves UNC Charlotte staff and faculty getting out in the community and volunteering. And this is a fresh post on our YouTube channel. I encourage everybody to take a look at it, but I'm just going to go ahead and get it started here, and we'll take a few minutes and watch the 2013 Giving Green wrap-up video, and then talk a little bit more about how Giving Green represents our engagement.
The Giving Green campaign gives UNC Charlotte a wonderful opportunity to support our community agencies and organizations, certainly across the area, but across campus as well. It gives us a chance to give back to our community as well as to give back to the programs and departments and units here on campus. The 2013 kickoff was actually a great success. We saw growth in numbers, and we saw growth in donors as well as growth in dollars for kickoff.
To see this fair, to see the employees gathering so that they can give. And it just shows the commitment that you have to the Charlotte community here at UNC Charlotte. And it just really gives me joy because I know it's going back to over 100 agencies in the community.
I think word is getting out that the kickoff is a fun opportunity to come together. Again, we do offer free luncheon and the agency fair, and also the opportunity to actually give while you're at kickoff. Also, we provide an opportunity to give through community service time during our Giving Green Volunteer Week. This gives faculty and staff members the opportunity to volunteer at a number of organizations across our area, and it also provides a wonderful opportunity for faculty and staff who aren't in a position to give financially, but they can give up their time.
UNC Charlotte has been a loyal, committed volunteer partner for many years and has sent teams and droves of teams out here to stock and sort and to load and to check teachers in and check them out, and we could not operate without that partnership.
Well, volunteers are critical. I mean, I don't want to say that lightly. They're literally essential to our livelihood and what we do is a success for our mission. We have over 2 miles worth of trails, both on the public side and the medical side, and they're maintained by volunteers. Everything from raking them, because we don't want to use a backpack blower, it'll scare the birds, and so they literally hand rake the trails. The gravel that has to be replaced on a regular basis, and then we've had some tree work done. They're moving logs and helping out. All of the maintenance work that we're done is done by volunteers, and we're extremely grateful for the group today.
Last year we did over 100,000 volunteer hours, which is the equivalent of 48 full-time staff people. Saves us $2.3 million in labor costs. Volunteers are huge for us. We only have about 24 full-time staff people at Second Harvest Food Bank, so volunteers literally double us.
We touch 9,000 educators in our store and over 135,000 students because of volunteers. We only have 8 full-time staff members here, a couple part-time staff members. There is no way in the world we could do that on our own.
It's very exciting to have UNC Charlotte employees come in and help volunteer in order to help us continue to feed those in need. Hunger is going to be a problem all the time. So it makes me proud to be a UNC Charlotte 49er, and I'm glad to see them out in the community.
And we look forward to growing that partnership over the years. We look for more and more volunteers to get involved from UNC Charlotte, and it speaks to the greater issue of education in our community, that there is a commitment from K through 12 and beyond.
Giving Green is much more than just a 4-week fall campaign. Giving Green should be a way of life for all UNC Charlotte faculty and staff members, and also our students and our alumni alike. We want folks to understand that the Giving Green spirit should live beyond the campaign time frame and should go over the course of the whole year. We want to make sure we're out in the community supporting the arts, the science, the culture, and doing so proudly with a Giving Green spirit.
Thank you, UNC Charlotte, for your support.
Thank you, Niners, for putting the uni in university.
Thank you for donating.
Thank you for Giving Green.
All right, and before we continue our conversation about community engagement, I would like to make a note that that video, like more than 800 others, is on the UNC Charlotte YouTube channel. So if you enjoyed seeing that, want to see it again, or want to share it with your friends or put it on Facebook, please do that. Go to the YouTube channel, and it's one of the more recent ones, so it should be right at the top. Otherwise, just search for Giving Green and you'll find it. And I think one of the things that Stacy said in that video, Jeanette, is pretty important, and that has to do with the Giving Green spirit being something that we all kind of want to display and exemplify throughout the year. And it seems like we're doing a pretty good job of that, but one thing I wonder, particularly during the Giving Green time, do we do a good enough job communicating to the members of our university community that you may, and in fact quite likely, are already out there doing things in the community, doing the things that the popular term is giving back. So many people are giving back in so many ways. And what more can and should we be doing to try to get our arms around how often the people who are part of our university community are truly giving back?
Sure, and that's a great question, and one of the things that I'm starting to really focus on this year. First of all, you're right, and Stacy said it as well. While we call it Giving Green, if you think about it, philanthropy is really about giving of your, not just of your treasures, of dollars, but of your time and your talent as well. And so clearly one of the things that we focus on in the community relations world is identifying different opportunities for people here at the university to be engaged. Students, faculty, staff, alumni. One example, I think you have a slide that you can share on the Habitat Project as an example. The student chapter of Habitat came up with this idea of building a home at homecoming, since we were having our first fall homecoming with the new football team. And they were able to do a great job raising money, especially by engaging some alumni in that effort as well. And then through that, we were able to have alumni and students working side by side while they were framing the house, as an example, here on campus. The house has since moved to its permanent location. We have other volunteers from UNC Charlotte who are participating in that. But that was really driven by students, but a great opportunity to engage faculty, staff, and alumni as well. So that's a great example of community engagement, giving of your time. We also, I mean, if you look at, I know we all have community service hours that we can use, and if you were to look at that within the staff, so we've got staff and faculty of about 3,000 total. this past year, they logged almost 5,000 hours of community service. And what I would say is that's just the tip of the iceberg for a couple of reasons. One is our faculty generally are engaged anyway as part of their jobs, so they're not taking those community service hours. But the other thing is all the work, all the commitment that our faculty and staff have in the community that they are doing outside the workplace. And so at night and on the weekends and that sort of thing. So that 5,000 hours is understated by a lot. The same is true on the student side. There are certain student organizations that require community engagement. And so we do have a system, and we partner with Sean Langley in Student Affairs on this. Sean has a system where those students can log those hours. They logged over 22,000 hours this past year. That's, once again, just a tip of what is really happening out there. So there are some great examples of that. But we'd love to be able to capture even more of that because, once again, it allows us to tell our story. The power of one in the community, when you add it all up, the power of 26,000 students, 3,000 faculty and staff, we really make a huge impact in this region.
Yeah. Well, Chancellor Dubois in the last couple years has started concerted, focused effort to take full days to go into the communities. When we talk about the Charlotte region, various maps give us 12 counties. Some say 13.
Right. I've even seen 14 or 16.
And it's a massive footprint. It's much more than just the city limits. So, but getting out a little farther and a little more beyond maybe our usual sense of what is Greater Charlotte. In this image, it's not to suggest that Lincolnton is that far away, but this is the chancellor at the Lincolnton Rotary, Lincoln County Rotary, not too long ago. But those trips, I think, represent, in some ways, what our faculty, in particular, might already doing and being in terms of being on the ground in those locations, and not just taking a message from the university, but asking, what can we do? How can we be better partners? And I think another interesting aspect of these visits that the chancellor's been making are that we're doing a better job of connecting with our alumni. And when we talk about giving green being something that is part of your life, I mean, what a great, few thousand stories we must have out there that we just need to, again, get out there and kind of quantify of our alums who are on the ground in the Charlotte region doing great things in their communities. So community engagement, as you've indicated, is something that's much more than an administrative unit on campus. It kind of intersects everything that we're doing as a university.
It's a culture.
It is, yeah. And one other thought, we've talked about the Carnegie classification and the fact that we've opted into that, opted into essentially seeing how we meet the standards and hopefully continue to get a great classification from Carnegie. But the UNC General Administration has also asked us.
Right. That wasn't an opt-in.
Asked in air quotes, asked us to also start to better tell our story in a way that they can, take it and run with it. So let's look at a couple slides that indicate the way that general administration is looking at us in the context of community engagement.
Sure. This is something that President Tom Ross commissioned this work back in 2012. And it was a task force of representatives from several different campuses of the UNC system. We were not part of that initial initial task force. But what that group did is he really said, look, it's really important that we better understand the full scope and impact that we have in North Carolina. That's not both individually as state-funded institutions or state partially funded institutions.
State located.
State located, but also about the system overall. Yeah. So it's both the individual and the collective impact. And he said, we need to be able to better articulate that. So first of all, that we could strengthen our reputation as a collaborative and inclusive institution. And member of the North Carolina communities, but also support our capacity to be more strategic, more responsive in developing those mutually beneficial partnerships. Once again, that to me is the operative term, is mutually beneficial. And so what they did is that task force then created some metrics. We were then able to participate in a pilot and helped refine what those metrics would be as we go into this academic year. And so these are the 5 categories. They're measuring student curricular engagement, so that's really about student service learning, that type of thing. Research, inquiry, and creative activity, that is things that especially help address what the needs are in a particular community. So that could be around economic development, but it could also be about addressing societal needs. Then they ask for some examples of community university projects that have mutual benefit. And the good news is what they're capturing here is basically the same thing that we need to capture for that Carnegie nomination.
Sure.
So hopefully most of this is not going to be duplicate work, but instead it's complementary work. It also looks at community education and outreach to enhance quality of life in the community. And then finally, we do share a few, up to 5 success stories on community engagement that are much more exhaustive in the description of those reports. It's once again what I've found is just going through that pilot exercise has really better positioned us to know about some of those different things that are happening out there and to articulate and measure what the impact is that we're having.
Well, from what we know and feel about this institution, when you look at these bullets, you think, well, we must be hitting it out of the park in all these categories. But are we, not where we should be in some aspects of the way we measure community engagement?
What I would say is if you look at those individual activities, in many ways we are hitting it out of the park. Because we do have so many great relationships and mutually beneficial partnerships. Where we're not hitting it out of the park is our ability to articulate it. But that is what these processes are actually helping us do. So the fact that we opt in to do this stuff it really does help us be able to tell our story better, whether it's on those community days that the chancellor goes out to those different counties, or whether it is conversations that we have with state legislatures or with funders or whatever the case might be. So, so that's really where our focus is to be able to better tell the story and better actually measure the so what. As well. And so, but there are other things that this university is doing that I think sets us ahead. For instance, this is not true at every university. It's now a requirement for faculty to have community engagement in order to get tenure.
Sure.
I literally just came from the first part of a selection process. The provost announced an award a year ago to recognize a tenured faculty member for their community engagement. This past year, Jim Cook was named for that, and literally, I just came from a meeting where we were reviewing the nominations to narrow that pool a little bit to get more detail on faculty that are doing that work again this year. And I'm constantly blown away by the stories that I see in all of these efforts.
And I think that's a good place to end this discussion, knowing full well that we're going to have you back, because this is essentially...
I could talk a long time.
Well, and it's such an important part of the life of the university now
really
that
is.
we just need to talk with you periodically about how we're doing. Give me your last 2 cents on, if you're talking to somebody who works here, a staff member, a faculty member, anybody who's part of the university community, and they're hearing your message, you're saying being engaged in the community is important, not just because it's the right thing to do, but because it helps the university's story to be told in better ways. And they're thinking to themselves, well, I do this activity. I wonder if that's something that Jeanette would be interested in knowing about. Or I'm planning this this research project, or my class is going out. We're going to be hands-on in the field, and I haven't heard about what you're up to, Jeanette, which seems unlikely. But is it okay for people to just reach out to you and say, is this what you're talking about? Because I do this all the time, and I bet you're going to have a lot of people who say that on a regular basis around here.
We would love to know those stories. We really would. The one caveat that I would give is that with this small team, sometimes people might come and say, so can you help us run this program?
Right, there's that.
And I can't commit to that because we
right.
do have very limited resource.
Yeah.
But what we want to do is be able to help them connect to the right people as needed, and then ensure that between us and their communicators and other opportunities that we have, that we are not just collecting that information, but that we are telling those stories individually as we hear them as well. So it's not about compiling them all into a pretty report at the end of the year, though we'll probably do that too, but it's about being sure that the people that really need to know and would be intrigued by that work are aware of it.
Yeah, and maybe
So we do want to know.
well, when you talk about compiling into a pretty report, there's certainly much more all of us can do in telling and displaying those stories for the folks who work here too, and plenty to be inspired about. You know, the Giving Green wrap-up video is a good example
It's
of
a
that.
great
But
example.
there's so much more that we can and should be doing. And you know, speaking from the perspective of university communications, you can't go wrong when you're putting together those kinds of stories in whatever medium it may be, print, broadcast, etc. So anyway.
So please tell us.
Yeah, right. So all that said, if you've been under a rock and don't know that Jeanette is here, you do now. And community engagement at UNC Charlotte, it is part of what we're all here to do. It's part of the story of this university, and a story that we all have the privilege of being a part of writing. And there's such great material to work with. So, as I've just promised, we'll have Jeanette back, and we'll talk more generally about community engagement, but I'm hoping as well we can talk quite specifically about some of the specific projects and initiatives that are coming up in the next year.
That'd be great. We'd love to share some of those.
Yeah, and with that said, we will also get Jeanette over in this chair and let her talk to people about it too, and hopefully
That'd be
you'll
great. Love
keep your head together for a full half hour like I'm sometimes not able to do. So thank you all for joining us once again on the Live Wire on Inside UNC Charlotte, and thanks to our guest Jeanette Sims today from the Community Relations.
Whatever, the
But-
community group.
Think of it as community engagement, because community engagement is central to what we do at UNC Charlotte, and we appreciate you putting us on your screen and for Jeanette being with us today. And we'll see you again next time.
Thanks, Stephen.